Yeah, hi. I am Randhir Kumar, Senior Consultant from SME for Wireless Technology in Koenig Solutions. Today I'm going to discuss about guest access in wireless local area network. So this is my topic today on which we will make this video. So this is my screen which is showing this topic which is reflecting as a describing guest access architecture. Let's understand first what guest access mean and why we will use this concept in wireless local area network. So before moving this different slide, let's understand what is guest access. Guest access is that if any unknown user or if anyone who is visiting your campus for any reason as a business partner or as an individual, if anyone trying to access your WLAN, so you have only one option to give him as a guest user. So that guest user will land on your SSID, which will connect and which will be created by your guest wireless LAN controller, who is locally residing in your company premises. And you also provide them the limited access, which can restrict particular guest user for a time that can be in minute, second, and it can be in number of days also. So this is the major portion which we are going to focus in this guest access architecture. How this guest access architecture will be created, how we will configure it, so that we will going to discuss in this. So what is traditional wired guest access network? If we generally see, this diagram represents that we have this Cisco IS firewall. Can you see here where you can see this red icon, which is representing your firewall device, where your ISP is, your ISP connection is landed, and behind your this firewall, you have your WLAN network, which is connected with different devices like router and switches and the different hardware which is placed. So this is normal traditional wired guest network. In this complete wired guest network, our wireless device is also connected with your backbone. Can be called as a controller, access points is also here. In wireless DMZ guest network, you can see that we have a guest VLAN in the DMZ, and we have another VLAN which is connected to the wired network also. So if we take any example that if any client who is connected to any access point which is broadcasting the SSID, so that particular SSID is not directly sending the traffic to the internet, because the landing controller which is managing the SSID is not responsible for the guest network, because that controller is forwarding traffic somewhere in the DMZ where your traffic needs to be processed with the firewall, because firewall is a device which is responsible to restrict a particular traffic according to your company design. And we have another controller in the DMZ which takes the responsibility of all the guest traffic which is landing on the company enterprise controller, and that will be process the guest traffic, whoever the guest SSIDs or the access point which is sending traffic to the internet. So in Cisco Unified Wireless Guest Network, you can see here we have different access points here. So in this access point, is all the access point on this network is broadcasting the traffic of the same SSID. But let's suppose if any enterprise user connecting to the SSID, so the same controller will process those SSID for internet communication. So that's called as a foreign controller. So we have a two type of controller that we use for the guest network environment. One is called foreign controller and one is called anchor controller. So foreign controller is the landing controller where traffic directly landing from guest user or your enterprise user. But all the traffic coming from enterprise SSID, which will be processed by the same controller, which is your foreign controller. But if the same SSID is coming from the guest network or the guest SSID, you can say, which will not processed by this foreign controller, it will be processed by the anchor controller. And this anchor controller is in the DMZ. It is not in like in our segment. It is placed in somewhere in the behind the firewall, because we have no idea what action is going to taken by your guest user. That guest user can be any rogue user, also can be any hacker, can be any attacker also. So most of the time, if any unknown user or any guest people who trying to access your Wi-Fi, you process their SSID by the anchor controller directly, which is in the DMZ zone. So this is two idea here is very important to understand, the foreign controller and the anchor controller. So foreign controller is the controller which takes responsibility of the traffic which is coming from your enterprise user or for your company user. And anchor controller is the WLC which takes responsibility of all the guest traffic which is unknown user trying to access your Wi-Fi network of your WLAN. So let's give you idea about controller platform for the guest access. So we have a different model of the controllers that we will use for the different level. So we have a different series of the controller that we used in this section. We have Cisco 5500, 4400, 4402. We have Cisco WISM also. So this WISM is a Wi-Fi service module. It is actually required to fit in the 6500 series of switches, which is, this is a kind of a modular blades which we will insert in the 6500 series of chassis. And that gives me the same facility what we have from the dedicated WLCs like 2504 and 5508. So we have a different model of YSM. Then we have a different newer version. If you say we have 3850, we have 3650. These are the modular controllers which is inbuilt with the switches. Then we have different standalone controller also like 2106, which is the legacy one, 2112, 2125, 2504. So 2504 is very common that we are using in the like most of the companies that we are using. And if you talk about the advanced controller which can give this feature of anchor and foreign, can be higher on like 7500, which is known as a flex connect controller. And we have the highest model is WLC 8500 series. That is one of the highest standard of the WLCs that we are using. So wired guest access and wireless guest access. Guest access is the common in terms of any wired or wireless technology, but most of the time the challenge comes from the guest access comes from the wireless, because in wireless we have no idea what people is trying to access and what kind of attacks that can be created by any user, because they are roaming somewhere in the campus. We have no idea what they are using at their client devices, what security level they have, what kind of devices they are accessing the internet of our company. So that's why we are very concerned with the guest access Wi-Fi connectivity, not with the wired connectivity. But we do have those guest access parameters with wired also. So let's move on the guest access feature for the Wi-Fi. We have some informations that we need to keep in mind while creating some SSID or configuring the controller for the guest access, that redundancy. So what is redundancy? So multiple anchor controller can be configured for the guest WLAN and VLAN, means if one controller goes down, we can have multiple controllers that can automatically take over of those access points which are controlled by the controller which is failed. Then we have a scalability. If you'd have multiple controller for the backup, so maximum up to 24 controller exist in a single mobility group. Multiple mobility group exist in a mobility domains. Anchor controller can cross a mobility domain. So to achieve this kind of roaming and mobility group, we could have a multiple controller that can be connected each other and can give the best performance for the guest access. So this is an idea of the guest access that we can configure and we can achieve, but we need to keep in mind that if any point of time, if we are looking forward for the guest access architecture for wireless LAN, the important part is to keep in mind we need two controller at least that can behave as a anchor controller and foreign controller. That model and operating system inside the controller should have a sufficient latest iOS, which should have higher version of the iOS installations, which can support this facility as a guest access technology. Second, the architecture and the placement of controllers should be like that. Landing should be your foreign controller, treating controller, and the controller who will gives the service to the guest traffic should be in DMZ behind the firewall, so that all the rules should be checked for the guest access for your company. So this is the initial level information which is required to set up or design a guest access architecture. In the next video, we will discuss about how we can configure this guest access, what kind of SSID and what setting is required to achieve this guest access network. So thank you for watching this video, and we'll come back soon for the another advanced configurations for the next video. Thank you.